Welcome to Jazz Time. JazzTime.com is an online store that buys, sells, trades authentic luxury watches. We make these videos so our customers can easily choose the best watch for themselves in the comfort of their own home. If you like this watch and would like to purchase it at the lowest price anywhere online, click on the link in the description below to buy it at JazzTime.com. Today, I'm going to be reviewing the Patek Philippe World Time Date, reference 5330G, with this light blue dial in 40 millimeters white gold, new release as of 2024. I will tell you a little bit about the history of the World Time, then tell you about where this watch stands in the lineup of other World Times. Then I'll tell you about the case bezel dial bracelet movement and give you a little contrast between this version and the previous version. Then finally try it on and give you my thoughts. So let's start with the history. The World Time in general is one of Patek's longest standing watches, and Patek has figured out how to make a watch tell times in all time zones. That I think there's something like 30 different time zones or something like that, and you can simply check the time in any different city or country just by clicking the button in the upper left hand corner. And I'll show you how to do that when we start talking about this watch itself. Okay, but suffice it to say that the World Time came out, I think something like 80 years ago or something like that. And it's quite a smart way for watchmakers or Patek to display a watch with different time zones on it, not just one. For example, GMT, you can only set it to one time zone, but a World Time, as the name implies, can be set to any time. You can set it to Auckland, to Los Angeles, to Dubai, to Beijing, all sorts of different places. Okay, anyways, that's the function of the World Time and a little bit about the history. Now, I don't want to tell you all about the history, but let's just go back like 10 years. So this reference number is 5330. It's just a new 2024 release. The generation that this one succeeds is the 5230. It has one digit different, and it does not have a date. That 5230 came out in approximately 2016 until 2023, so it had a good, I guess that would make it a 7-8 year run, and it was also a little bit smaller, and it did not, as I said, have the date. So Patek has continually been, and actually this is the first time that the World Time has actually had a date, which is quite useful actually, because I've had this 5230 before, and it was a little bit small, and it also lacked a date, which Patek has fixed both of those problems by changing it from a 38.5 millimeter to a now standardized 40 millimeter, and also has put a good complication, which is the date on it, which is I believe is very useful to know the date, because you often forget. Actually, I don't even remember what date it is today, the 21, 22, or 23. I forgot. It would be nice if I was wearing this watch and I could tell. Okay, so that a little bit of the history. In 23 or 24, they came out. Actually, in 23, Patek came out with a limited edition Tokyo version that was purple at the Watch Art Grand Exhibition, and that was when it made its debut. They didn't make a lot of them. I think it was limited, and it was also purple, which is not a very common color. So this is the first time that a non-limited version in this nice, how would you call it? They call it a green, or they call it a gray, blue opaline. To me, just kind of like a light blue or a denim color. And this is the first time that it's been offered as a non-limited version available to the public, like you and me. Okay, all right. So that's a little bit about the history. Now let's start talking about the watch itself. Okay, and as I said at the beginning of the video, I will kind of compare it to the previous generation so that you have an idea of why you should spend more money to buy the 5330 as opposed to the 5230. Okay, let's start with the first thing, and that is the case. As I just mentioned to you, the case is bigger. Now, what is the case? It is the part that houses the movement, the dial, and that the bracelet attaches to, the most important part. And it's made of white gold. Now, they did make previously white gold ones. They made almost every iteration you can imagine, because as I said, that previous generation, the 5230, had been around for quite some time in I think, 8 years or something like that. So as you can imagine, they made it in rose gold, white gold, platinum. I mean, that's pretty much it. I think maybe even in yellow gold too. They made the the world time, the one that has enamel drawings on that was in yellow. So that older version, they made it in like every material, and they also made it with a bunch of different dials. They made it with blue dial, gray dial, um, you know, red dial. Gosh, they did a whole bunch of different things on it. Okay. And actually, I guess since we're kind of just left the history part, before the 5230, it was a 5130, which was even more old school looking. And that one had like a maybe 8-10 year run as well. Okay. But we're not talking about those old ones. We're talking about this 5330. So let's focus in on this case here. The case has enlarged from 38.5, which I will be very honest with you was too small. This watch was already crowded to begin with, as you can see, because it's got all this crazy stuff written all over it. And to make it small, it just did not make sense. It was already hard to read with all this stuff on it. And then on top of that, making it 38.5, that did not work at all. And it didn't, to be honest, the world time previously did not do that well. It continuously sold under retail, well, to be expected for a complication, or I should say non-Nautilus, non-Aquanaut, non-Cubitus. But still, it didn't do that well. We weren't getting tons of calls for the world time. Now, at this nice 40 millimeter, we are getting calls for it, and we are selling it, which is why we're making this video, by the way. And if you want to buy this watch, simply click on the link in the description below. You could buy it right away with a bank wire. Okay, so that is the case. Now, also though, not only has the case changed in size, they changed the shape of the case. Now this case is actually the same case that Patek uses on their weekly calendar. They came out with it on the weekly calendar, which is reference 5212. You see these lugs, they are stepped lugs, which in my opinion are absolutely beautiful. They have a two-tiered stepped lug. They don't do this stepped lug on any other watch. They first released it on the weekly calendar. They do other stepped lugs. So they do stepped lugs on the 5320, which is a perpetual calendar, and I believe they also do it on. Actually, I think that's all they do it on. Just the perpetual calendar 5320. Oh, they also do it on the 5172, which is a manual chronograph, but it has a different type of lug. It has a three-stepped tiered lug. This has a two-stepped lug, which is only found in the weekly calendar, which is also a smash hit, by the way, and it was released in stainless steel. This one copies basically the same case, except that it has a pusher, but it is the same size, 40 millimeter. The weekly calendar was a smash hit. This one is also a smash hit. And so let's talk about the case itself. Now the case, as I just told you, is 40 millimeters. Not only is it bigger in terms of diameter, but look at the side profile. The thickness is now 11.5 millimeters. The previous generation was 10 point something millimeters. So it is thicker and bigger. Now you might be wondering, is that a good or bad thing? You're not really sure. And does it even matter? I will tell you, yes, it does matter. The watch being thicker when the watch becomes bigger, it should simultaneously become thicker. That is to keep the watch having the same proportion. You don't want it to look like a flat pancake. At the same time, you don't want it to, be too thick. So you would need to strike a good balance. And so if you increase the diameter to 40, then a good thickness to have is 11.5 millimeters, which this one is. And Patek just hits it right on the dot when it comes to thickness. And I don't think it should be thinner. It doesn't have enough wrist presence when it's too thin like. So anyways, okay, that is a little bit about the case. Okay, so the different case style, as well as thickness, as well as size, which is a big deal. Okay, that's pretty much everything is different about the case. Not that the old case wasn't beautiful. It was also beautiful, but this one is just more beautiful. Okay, now let's move on to the dial. So the dial is, in this case, there's only one option for it. I'm sure over the years they'll change different dial configurations. To me, this is like the perfect dial, though. I love it. It looks very casual. It's on this denim strap with this denim matching dial. Like, it just looks fantastic. It looks very laid back and just really cool undercover for sure. Okay, but what exactly about this can I say? Well, it has a carbon pattern As you see, these little carbon motif pattern, they've been doing this actually also recently on their Calatrava that they released before, and it makes the watch look much more casual. Before, on the previous World Time, they did a guilloche pattern on the dial. And if you don't know what that means, well, it just means that it's a very intricate design on the dial. And if you want to know what that looks like, you can go to our website, jazztime.com. But it's a very traditional, old school way to do a fancy dial. It looks beautiful, don't get me wrong, but it's really old school. And Patek is trying to come and make their very old school product look a little bit more contemporary by adding this carbon motif pattern that you see in front of me. And I think they did a great job. Another thing they did differently about the dial than they did the previous generation. Now the 5230, which is the previous generation, had no luminescent on the dial at all. So you cannot actually read this watch after dark. And that was kind of a big pain in the butt. Imagine, you can't really, after night, you can't read it. It did have, the previous generation that is, had very cool hands. In fact, they had one-of-a-kind hands, but they were not luminescent. And also the dial was smaller, which made it much more difficult to read. In this situation, they have improved upon that. I actually talked about it in my previous video, and I said, you know what the problem with this watch, the 5230, is? It's just too small and it's too hard to read, and there's no luminescent. They must have listened to Jazz Time's video, because now Patek has improved upon that, made the dial bigger, and they made it luminescent, and now it's much easier to read. In fact, to me, I would not even want to see this watch bigger than what it is. To me, they've done it perfectly. There's nothing further that any human could do to this watch to make it any better, in my opinion. And also Patek's opinion. That's why they released it. Okay, so the dial is also different in that the motif, also the luminescent on the hour hand and the hour markers are different. And finally, as I said earlier in the video, it has the date, 1 through 31. And that is passed through with this red marker here, and it's actually attached with a see-through little stick, or whatever you would call this. I don't know what it's made of exactly, but it's like a see-through stick. So it floats here, and you attach this red hand to it, and it goes around 1 and 31. It's actually looks and it is amazing. And I'll get to the movement when I show you how to use this thing in a second, okay? All right, that is the dial. And as I said, there's only one option for it anyways. Let's talk about the strap. Now, on the strap, Patek killed it. Let me tell you, before 2015, Patek was doing really sucky straps. They were doing almost all their stuff really traditional with black crocodile or some kind of crocodile, and it just looks super formal, like you're wearing a tuxedo all the time. And those watches, to be honest, they didn't do that well. It was old school, and it just did not do that well. Yeah, they did okay, but not that well. And I think the reason is because people were going away from the super formal tuxedo look into a little more casual look. And I know that for sure, because these watches are following, Patek needs to, even though they are Patek, they still need to make watches that people actually want to buy. And you can't be making crocodile watches or ellipses or some garbage that people don't want. You got to make things that people want, and this is one of them. People wear jeans, so why wouldn't they wear a jean textured watch? Well, the answer is they would, and they released this one. They also released another Nautilus that had a very similar band, and they really knocked it out of the park on this one. It looks totally casual. It looks beautiful. It matches the watch perfectly. It goes with like everything that you're going to wear. It just looks seamless. So the strap on this one, it's a calfskin hand-stitched denim pattern. It's blue-gray, that's what they call it. I kind of call it like a light blue. And it has a fold-over clasp. So they just done it perfectly. Nothing else to say other than it's done perfectly. And I also like that they did the stitching in white instead of tone-on-tone, because that also matches the dial printing. The printing on the dial itself is white. You see the words of the cities? Those are all white. So it makes sense that you would put the stitching of the denim in white as well. So it's just a very nice touch. I can't imagine them doing it any better. Okay, now let's talk about the movement here. Now the movement is different from the previous generation. It's a 240HU. Here's the different part, C. The C is the different part. Okay, the previous generation had a diameter of 27.5 millimeters. This one has a diameter of 30 millimeters, which makes sense. It's a bigger watch, bigger movement, and also has a date as opposed to previously it did not. It has 306 parts. The previous generation had 239. That's a difference of approximately 70 parts, which makes sense. You need 70 extra parts to make this dial thing move around. And so that's what it is. Okay, now let me show you a little bit. The movement is beautiful. Of course, it has a micro rotor. The previous generation also has a micro rotor. It actually looks very similar to the previous generation. If you were to look at them side by side, which I have, they actually more or less look the same, just a little bit bigger, which makes sense. But let me show you how this watch works, because this is a cool part, okay? So we're here in Los Angeles time zone, okay? So let me put Los Angeles at the center. You put it at the 12 o'clock. You press the button in the top left until Los Angeles is at the center. Okay, and then here it happens to be 3:22, or sorry, 3 o'clock. Okay, or sorry, 4 o'clock here. So I'm going to set it to 4 o'clock. Okay, 4 p.m. Now what I do is I pull out the crown and I roll through the counter until it says 4 p.m. But I need it to say 16 because it's 24 hours. So if I put it at 4, it would be 4 a.m. That's not correct. I'm gonna put it at 16. Okay, 16. I'll put it for 4:30. That way we get the hands out of the way. So I'm gonna set it to 16:30 with the Los Angeles at the 12 o'clock. Okay, now after I've done that, I push the crown in. Now the watch is set. I don't need to set it anymore. Now all I have to do is simply press the button in the upper left-hand corner if I want to go to whatever I want to go to. So let's say I want to tell it the time is in, let's say, Moscow. Okay, so I would press this button until I got to Moscow. Okay, and what will happen, actually today is October 22nd. Let me also tell you that. You set the counter, or sorry, set the date 1-31 with a pusher on the bottom left-hand corner. Okay, so today's the 22nd October, 4:30 p.m. in Los Angeles. But in Russia, in Moscow, okay, they've already passed into October 23rd, and they're at 1:23 a.m. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press this button and I'm going to set it to Moscow at the top instead of Los Angeles. And what you'll see is the time will actually set to 2:30. But that's because they're not on daylight savings, okay? And this thing cannot account for daylight savings. But what is the interesting thing? Look at what happens when I go to Moscow. The date goes from 22 to 23. So the system actually already can calculate that, hey, in Moscow, it's not the 22nd, it's the 23rd. And it's at, 0 to 30. And wow, that's quite awesome. And we can even try another one. So for example, like if we want to check like Dubai, or Dubai or something, then you can see when you keep on pressing it, it'll go to 2:30, or sorry, 3:30. Sorry about that. Okay, but the point is that you can check the time. Sorry, when I said Moscow earlier, I said it late by 1 hour. Sorry about that. I said 2:30 is actually, it'll show 3:30 is actually 2:30. Sorry about that. But anyways, okay, look, you can press this little button and calculate the time in each place. The only drawback to this system is that during daylight savings times, which is spring until fall, USA and many other countries add an hour so that we can have more daylight. But the true daylight time is the winter time, which does not have daylight saving. And the problem is that this watch cannot account for that. In some places, such as in Asia, like Hong Kong, Japan, Bangkok, even Moscow, or at the moment, is not using daylight savings. So their time is going to be off by 1 hour. So you have to know that and subtract that. And it will be right the other half of the year when there is no daylight savings. I know it's a little bit, maybe they'll figure that out in the 5430, but right now they haven't figured that out, so you're gonna have to account for that yourself. But it's not that difficult, I think, to understand that you are in daylight savings and it's at 1 hour, not a big deal. Okay, but the point is, that's how it works. Okay, now look, let's try this watch on my wrist and give you my thoughts. So I have a 7.5 inch wrist, and I'm 200 pounds. and I'm 6 foot tall. Now, I really like this watch. I've always been a fan of the World Time. Well, I haven't always been a fan of it. I liked the World Time. I never loved it. But in this current configuration with a bigger size, more legible, with a date, I mean, I don't see how they could go wrong with this watch. This is what the watch should have been the entire time. I'm going to give it an A for sure. I would give it an A plus if they could account for this daylight savings, which maybe in the next generation they can. But right now, I will just give them an A. And it just looks fantastic, and it checks so many boxes. So look, if you want to buy this watch at the lowest price anywhere online, click on the link in the description below to buy it at jazztime.com.
If you want to find out more about the watch you just saw in the video, you can just click below on Show More to see the full description. Then you can check the link next to Model as seen in video, click on it, and you will get to the proper page where you can see all the details. If you're watching on a mobile phone, you have to click on the arrow down on the right hand side below the video to see the full description. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. If you would like to share this video with your friends, you can use the share button below and share it on any platform you like. If you have questions, constructive feedback, want to tell us about some mistakes or misspeaks, just write a comment below. If you want to see more videos like this, you should subscribe to our channel and visit our channel page where you can find all the videos. And if you're interested in a specific watch brand, you can check out our playlists. If you want to check the price for a watch or want to buy one, remember at jazztime.com you always get a steep discount, so you should check the prices with us. If you want to know the price for a specific watch, just go to Google, type in JazzTime, plus the brand, model and the details you're interested in, and Google will find the right page for you. Thank you for watching.